The next thing that you're going to prepare as part of getting ready to have this conversation is 3 or 4 examples of the behaviour that you want to change. These need to be factual rather than opinions. It's very difficult for somebody to really understand what you're talking about unless you're giving a specific and detailed example of the conduct or behaviour that you want to change that's problematic. So when we're having these type of conversations, we want to deal with the facts. We don't want to come out with statements like, you're always late, or you're just so untidy, or you're too abrupt with clients. These are not specific enough to enable the person to really understand where their conduct or their behaviour is a problem and the impact that it's having on the business or colleagues or your clients. So we need to prep 3 or 4 examples, really clear examples of when this conduct or behaviour has happened that you want them to think about, and then you could go into a debate about that. If you say to someone a broad brush statement like, the other day at that conference, you just didn't speak to the client in the right way, it begs a lot of questions, and you're going to end up going around in circles about, well, which conference are you talking about? I don't remember this. Which client was it? I don't think that that's what I said. Or, you're going to have a lot of sort of side questions around the example you're giving, rather than focusing on the behaviour or the conduct of the person. If you've been very specific about that, the discussion could be about the facts of the case, rather than disagreeing about your opinion about how they acted. So think about 3 or 4 factual examples of the conduct or the behaviour that demonstrates where there's a problem. So the types of things you want to be able to articulate are: when did this happen? The time, the date, the place, who was present. What specifically was it that they did or said, or perhaps what they didn't do or didn't say? And what was the impact of that conduct or behaviour on the business, on others, on you, on your clients, on the reputation, etc. And how does this link to your values? Might be useful to think about. We'll come back to that in a moment. So, for example, you might say, on Wednesday you were late for the team meeting, and that caused disruption. We had to repeat certain items, which was a waste of everybody's time. So you're being really clear when it happened, what was the situation, what did they do, and what was the impact on the team members. Wasting time, repeating things for people, disruptive, etc. You might say, last week when we were together at the conference in London, you ignored a fellow team member, which made them feel really uncomfortable and creates an atmosphere for the rest of the day. Specific, again, it might be your opinion on what happened, but they can engage with that. They can see, okay, the behaviour was you just totally ignored that person, and that had an impact for that person, which created an atmosphere. You can then link that to the values. We are here, one of our values is treat everyone with respect. It didn't feel very respectful, wasn't really in line with how we do things. We need you to think about that in future. Another example, you submitted the report again to the client and the figures were inaccurate. You'd not correctly pasted them into the report. This undermines our credibility and reflects badly on us to the client. Again, really specific, very clear what needs to happen differently. Sometimes it is useful to link it to the values, particularly if perhaps there isn't such a clear impact. It's more about how they're dealing with things. In the example of the team meeting where you came in late, you disrupted the team meeting, then you cut across other team members. One of our core values is respect. Cutting across others in discussions isn't really in line with that. Or around the emails, tone of the emails to the clients, the tone of your email to the client was defensive and abrupt, which is not really in line with our customer first core value. So it's just trying to get them to understand why that behaviour is a problem in this situation. It might not be a problem in another company. They might be absolutely fine, but actually in our company, this is how we do things. We want you to be in line with our core values or the way we do things, how we interact with people, etc. So take a few moments, write down those 3 or 4 factual examples that you can rely on, that you have evidence for. It might not be hard evidence in the sense that it might be an opinion about how that behaviour impacted on another person, but it's something that the person can engage with, that they can recall, that they will remember. Yes, I was there. Okay, yes, I do remember that I didn't say hello to the rest of the team. And okay, now I can accept that would have made them feel a certain way. Okay,